is Exterminate Pest Control, and we're going to talk about how to catch rats with traps in your home. Generally, when we're dealing with traps, most people buy new traps, and through the process of manufacture, packaging, unpackaging, and now holding and baiting it, we're transferring human scent onto it an awful lot. And we've got to be cautious about that because rats are generally cautious creatures. So wear gloves even when you're touching a new trap and if you're baiting it as well. Now, the tendency for most people is to just set a trap because they want to get rid of the rat or rats immediately. The problem with that is that rats are very cautious creatures and they don't necessarily just come along and bite from the trap. Sometimes they do. I have caught rats within 24 hours, but it's not the norm. Rats generally tend to circle around a trap and cautiously approach it for days on end. They could be touching it with their mouth. They could be using their claw. They constantly keep touching on this and moving away and coming back and moving away. Now, it becomes a problem if this occurs. This can happen very, very easily. A lot of times we get traps basically set off and there's nothing in them. Sometimes the rat can actually get caught in the trap, but depending on the size of it, they can be powerful enough just to free themselves actually from the trap as well, which is another problem. However, in this case, if they're just setting it off by being cautious and cautiously interacting with it, by the trap snapping, they may now become trap shy, which is then an issue because we have traps down for weeks on end and there's nothing happening after that. So what do we need to do? Well, what I suggest is that we need to pre-bait our traps. That means we have to put a food source on the trap for the rat. Now, this might sound like we're feeding them, and maybe we are, but ultimately we want to reach our goal, which is to catch the rat itself. A lot of times the suggestion is to put peanut butter on the trap, but peanut butter can be associated if multiple traps have been snapped with danger. So try a few alternative food sources. You've got nuts, shelled nuts, some moisture content in dried dates, figs, apples, dried apricots, anything like that. But what we want to do is to leave some food around the trap. We're trying to get the rat to become extremely comfortable in being on, in and around the trap. So we allow this food to be taken, and then we want the rat to ultimately eat from here and for this food to be removed. Now, if this has happened after a few days, we can now go and set our trap. So now our trap is set. Now, again, we're going to bait it and we're going to leave a few bits in and around the trap. Again, why are we doing this? To repeat the sequence that happened previously. So again, we want the rat and then for it to come along and hopefully this time to catch the rat. Now, once we've caught the rat, what do? We want to dispose of the rat and keep our trap. Old traps are much better than new traps. Once rats have been around them, put their odour or scent on them, or even if we have blood from a catch or a kill, this is all fine. It might sound unhygienic, but this trap will be a better trap as rats will be more comfortable quicker or in and around this trap. So the problem with rats at times, if we have multiple rats, is that you can have dominant and subdominant rats. So we may have caught the dominant rat who may have eaten and taken from this, but now we're faced with a problem. Do we just set the trap again if we suspect there's more rats to catch? My suggestion again is to pre-bait the trap and in and around the trap and look again on a daily basis to see what happens. If all the food is taken quickly, we can now go and set the trap again. Other than that, we can use other traps like this, which is the black cat trap. This trap is a different trap to the other traps in that it's not a pressure pad. Nothing's going to happen if the rat gets on it, presses down on it, etc. And so they might be more cautious around pressure pad traps. This trap here requires the rat to be more involved with the feeding. So we need something a little bit more substantial for it to feed upon. So even if we put a dried date on this, the rat would ultimately have to grab it, have their body on it and start pulling upwards on it. So we can put a few food sources on this. Trap is now set. The rat can do anything in and around this. Nothing's going to happen. so they can freely come upon it. It's only if they now get involved with eating that and tearing it up that this will happen. So be patient when you're trying to catch rats. It can be a timely process, not as easy as you think. And baiting rats inside a house is not a good idea, especially if they move through walls or in different surfaces between walls, between ceilings and floors. If the rat dies anywhere within that, the smell can be horrendous and last for many weeks and months. Be patient, pre-bait your traps, set your traps, see what happens. Good luck.